Hey, we're in a series called Loveology, and last week, Pastor Doug kicked it off and really said, hey, this is gonna be kind of a course on really what God's love looks like. And for us to understand what God's love is, because it's possible that we have a broken understanding on what love is all about. It's possible it wasn't modeled well for us. It's possible that we thought we were in love only to find out that it ended with pain or a relationship break or a divorce. It's possible we thought we had a loving circumstance and then things went wrong. I don't know about you, but sometimes the most loving people in our lives are the ones that can hurt us the most. Matter of fact, I think it's also the other way. Some of the people that we've loved the most, we've also hurt. Because how much more those statements and things can be said. But today, my hope is that you are already experiencing just the love of the church. In a couple of ways, I hope you know that New Life is a safe place to show up where we don't have to act like we're perfect and we have it all together. This is a safe place that we love enough to realize that we are far from perfect, and yet we're going to experience the freedom and love that Christ has for us, and that this is okay, an okay place to not be okay. Yesterday at the men's breakfast, we had a gentleman, by the way, named Joe. He shared his testimony, and it was a powerful story of redemption, but it constantly reminds us that when we gather in this place, there are so many testimonies. And yet it's possible you feel like, man, if somebody knew my story, that you'd be alone. You're not. My bet is that right now, more than one person is dealing with a family member that is either close to death or within the last week has died in this environment. Multiple family members in this room are dealing with addiction. Multiple friends and families we know right now are on the brink of divorce. Multiple friends and families have a child that they're dealing with issues and stuff because we walk in here not as perfect people, but living in the mess of our life, trying to do our best and inviting God to show up in our story. And so my hope is that you would walk out today going, I think these are real people that are walking through life, doing it together, and not just trying to be better people, but we're trying to apply God's love and God's truth to our life. And that's really the hope, right? I mean, we can get self-help in a lot of different ways. We don't have to go to church for that. We can get it on tape now. We can listen to it online. Hey, Doug opened up in a unique way last week. He shared out of Romans 5:5, and he said this statement, that God has poured out his love into our hearts by the Holy Spirit. And we kind of unpacked the idea that if we're going to understand love, we got to first understand that God loved us, and he poured his love into our lives. So our goal is not to just love through the best lens that we know of love, but that we would experience God's love. And so over the next couple of weeks, we're going to explore God's love, and that we would be distributors of the perfect love that God gives us. How many would agree we would like to be receivers of perfect love? See, we've been given imperfect love before. Love that was manipulated, love that came with expectations, love that came with parameters. If I do this, you'll do that. Love that came with empty promises and broken, things that were a part of it. But what does God really have for us in love? Hey, when I started looking up kind of the thought of what love is, in fact, over the series, we're going to look at 1 Corinthians 13, a true definition of God's love for us. I started just kind of seeing what was out there, and because of Valentine's, I came across a few things that I thought I would share of what little kids thought love should be defined as. Some of them are pretty cute. It opens up with Rebecca, age 8. She says this, when my grandmother got arthritis, she could no longer bend over and paint her toenails. So my grandfather does it for her all the time, even though he has arthritis in his hands too. Isn't that sweet? Bill, age 4, he said, when someone loves you, it's the way they say your name that is different. You just know that you can trust your name in their mouth. Carl, age 5, love is when a girl puts on perfume and a boy puts on shaving cologne. Then they go out and smell each other. I love it. Yeah. Trust me, you smell a bad one, you'll pass. You know what I mean? Like, that's important. Carl, age 5. I'm reading the same one again. Let me jump down. Terry, age 4, said, love is what makes you smile even when you're tired. Danny, age 8. Love is when my mommy makes coffee for my daddy. Then she takes a small sip before giving it to him to make sure it tastes okay. Little Bobby, age 7, love is what's in the room at Christmas when you stop opening presents and just listen. Wow. Noel, age 7, love is when you tell a guy that you like his shirt, then he wears it every day after. So true. I love that. Nowadays, you just tell a guy, hey, that shirt makes you look skinny. He'll have 40 of those shirts in every color. Oh my gosh. Cindy, age 8, during my piano recital, I was so scared on stage. I looked out at all the people. Then I saw my dad waving and smiling at me. He was the only one doing that. Wow. Little Claire, age 6, Mommy loves me more than anybody else. You won't see anybody else kissing me to sleep. I love that. Chris, age 7, love is when my mom sees my daddy all smelly and sweaty. She still tells him he looks handsome. Mary Ann, age 4, love is when a puppy licks your face, even when you've left him home all day by himself. Lauren, age 4, I know my oldest sister loves me because she gives me all her old clothes and then has to go out and buy new ones. Jessica, age 8, you really shouldn't say I love you unless you mean it. But if you mean it, you should say it a lot. Little Ellie, my favorite, age 5. I know my mom loves my daddy because she always gives him the best piece of chicken. Right? What is love? To a child, love is so different in so many ways. And we're going to unpack that. My understanding of love growing up was really different. I mean, we grew up in a loving home, so I had that understanding. But I'm going to be honest, the things my parents were modeling is not what I was looking at when I was an elementary age child, right? I had a crush on a girl in my class, and what really made me like her is she was the fastest girl in our class. Just so you know, when you're in 4th grade and you're the fastest girl, there's somebody out there that's like, yep. You know what I mean? Like, we're just really simple. Then I got into middle school, late 80s, early 90s, and honestly, it was the year of starter jackets and high bangs. You know what I mean? Any ladies in the high bang era? You know what I mean? It was like, you see that. At the time, if I saw a young lady in a UNLV parka in the middle of summer in Concord, I was like, wow, girl. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just telling you, it was an awkward era for a lot of us. But how did we learn to understand love? Because here is the unique challenge on love. Christians are not the only one that experiences love. People outside the walls of church can also experience love. So when we talk about it, they're not understanding that what we're talking about is different from just loving another person. In fact, the love that we experience inside the church, the love we experience from God, should be strategically and significantly different than what anyone else experiences because of the true love of God. Now, the reality is you potentially could have a better understanding on love because you had a healthy model growing up. Can we agree that if you had a healthy model of love, it's just likely that you might experience a better understanding of what love is? We can agree with that. But can we also agree that some people, because they had a bad experience, will use that as the motivation to model healthy love even though they did not receive it as a child? So we realize that you don't have to have perfect love experience to experience love, but you also don't have to be a Christian to experience love. So when we talk about the love that God has for us, we're not just talking about an attractional love. I like somebody, they like me back. We're in a relationship, this or that. What we're talking about is a perfect love that God gives us, a love that we do not earn, a love that we do not deserve, a love that we can we can never work hard enough to get, and it's freely given with no expectations back. I recently read a book about love, and they were talking about the healthiest glimpse of what a marriage relationship would look like. And he said, they kind of went through to say, hey, what made people happiest? And he came to a line, and it was this, that people experience the highest level of relational happiness in marriage when they believe they owe everything to the other person and deserve nothing back in return. When you get to that place that you love, that my goal is to extend and give everything I have with zero expectations back. I didn't give it because you owe me. I give it because I'm in love with you, and because of that, you have to do nothing in return. And they said when that can be reciprocated between two people, they will experience the highest levels of comfort, relationship, peace, respect, value. What would it look like to experience and model what God's love is, not to just be on the receiving end, but the giving? And so can we push it a little bit further? And so I want to ask maybe a question or kind of lean into a couple key ideas today. The first is this, that we are all longing for worth, fulfillment, and to be known. In fact, can I just say that those three words are really when we talk about love, what we're looking for? I mean, we sometimes will recognize it as the emotion, right? That we want to feel love and the fact that there's flowers or there's an energy about it. But what we're talking about is that we can be completely known, our best and our worst, our fears and our failures, our strengths, our weaknesses, that we could be completely vulnerable, that they would know our best and our worst. And of course, that we would have worth. Not worth in something that we've earned and therefore there's a monetary value. Worth in the fact that we become separated from anyone else. Our worth removes us from just being connected to all the other people to just being solely selected as the focus point of all attention and love and value and fulfillment. That there would be a connection that brings a level of peace, a level of meaning, a level of impact beyond what we can do on our own. And yet, even though the world is identifying in all different ways, looking for all different things, every one of us wants these things. And do you realize these three things are all given to us through Christ? Christ showed up so that we could experience worth. You realize that there was a price that was paid for us, the highest price of all. God sent his one and only Son because we were worth it. Fulfillment, that he would give us purpose and meaning. I love this about God, that God doesn't just show up and say, hey, I love you. He also says he gives you purpose, that there's a role, and that brings such meaning in our family. Recently, I was doing a small group of 8th grade guys. We have youth group on Wednesday nights here, and I get to be with our 8th grade guys. And we were going around the circle sharing kind of what chore we did in the house. How many grew up doing chores as a kid, by the way? I don't know if you know this, it's not that normal anymore, by the way. This happened before. Some kids never even heard about this word. They're like, what is a chore? You know what I mean? But it was like we were talking about a chore, and we went around the circle and said, we're like, hey, I have to pick up after the dog. I got to take out the garbage. We have to do everything. But let me give you, just as an idea, all of us are looking for a role to play in our own families, in our own lives. My bet is that if you joined a softball team or a league, you would want to show up and know that you have a place that you're going to go out in the field and play. You have a responsibility if you're first base or third. You want to know where you're hitting in the batting order because you're there. You want a role to play. We should be people that are giving roles to even kids and different ones because we're all looking for fulfillment. We're a part of the family. We're a part of the thing. God doesn't just welcome you in the family and say, hey, good, you're in the family. Just sit across the stage. You sit in a spot, don't say or do anything. No, you come into the family and he gives you a role to be a light, to be a hope, because all of us are looking for fulfillment. And then, of course, to be known. And he knows all of us. He knows our best. He knows our worst. He knows our junk and our stuff. And yet he continues to show us love even though he knows all of that. What a unique thought. So what does it look like if we were to experience that real love, but not just be an experience, like receive it, but then become extenders of it? In fact, in 1 John 4:10, it says it this way: this is real love. It's the defining factor for what love is. Notice it says that this is love. There's an action to what it is. Love is not sitting stagnant. No, it is. Not that we love God, but that he loved us and sent his son as a sacrifice for our sins. See, we love him, but it's broken love. It's love with expectation. It's love, we're going to love you because you're going to love us back. It's love, we're going to love you because you've already done something and we want... No, but God loved us for none of that. He loved us because his love is so perfect and so pure, and our love isn't like his love. This is a unique thing because we sometimes think that because we are made in his likeness that we're like him. And this is a deep thought, so let me take it a little further. When we're made in his likeness, it means that we're in some ways resemble some elements, but we're not like him. Remember, he is God and holy, we are not God. So when we live in a culture, when somebody says, hey, my view on life or the truth I believe, what they're saying is I am God, therefore I can say or be like God and create truth. And I'll tell you, that is not reality. Reality is there is a God who sets the rules and puts some things in place, and we're not like him, so we don't get to set the rules. And though we're in his likeness, we're not like him. So many times we think because we love, we are then like him. And the answer is we're not, because our love is imperfect. We are a broken image of what perfect love is. Perfect love sacrificed and gave his son. Our love is we need your forgiveness, therefore we come with love. Do you understand the brokenness the separation. So look what it would go on to say just a few verses later in verse 16. We know how much God loved us, and we have put our trust in his love. Look what it then says. God is love. If you're taking notes, would you circle that? He is this. This means that it's not that he just acts in loving ways. No, he is love. For God to be unloving doesn't make him an unloving God. It makes him no longer God. He is love 24/7, always, everything he does. So even when we read parts of the Old Testament and we see famines and hardships, we see wars and we see things wiped out, it was all done in a heart of love. It's never done out of just God going, hey, I'm so hate everyone and I'm here to wipe them all out. No, it's always done in a love that is drawing people to him. It's always done in a redemptive process as he's pouring his heart out for humanity. This is the perfect love of God. Well, it would go on to say this in our verse, and all who live in love live in God, and God lives in them. That's such a weird statement, so I want to take it as our takeaway for today. If God lives in us, we should therefore live in love. Our lives should just live in love. It should just be an extension of who we are, that we walk through constantly just extending the love of God to others, to living it out in a unique and passionate way. In 1 Corinthians 13, it gives us a glimpse and some descriptions of what love is and what it's all about. In fact, it says it this way as it opens up, 1 Corinthians 13:4. Love is patient and love is kind. Now, I don't know what kind of personality you have, but the word patient isn't a word that most people would define Ben Johnson as. I didn't grow up as a patient child. I'm not a patient person. Anytime I come to a light, I am looking at all the lanes, figuring out what kind of car would go faster, take off better. Like, it's just the way I am. I'm just an impatient person. I just constantly think in that way, and I have great reasons for being impatient. If you hear me talk about it, it's like, well, I just want to be more effective. I want to get more done. I make it sound great. But the reality is what we're talking about is an attribute of love. That when you love somebody, you're patient with them. And the amazing part is, I'm pretty good at being patient with strangers. Most of the time, I have the hardest time being patient with the people I love the most. The people that I'm most impatient with is sometimes my wife and my kids. The people that I'm most impatient with are friends that aren't doing what I thought they should do when I wanted them to do it. Because patience shows up, and what it really is saying is, hey, I need you to do what you're doing because I'm more important than you. Can you arrange your stuff and can you get it going because I really need to kind of move forward? Love is patient. Now here's the unique part of this. Though it's not part of my natural disposition, this should be something that shows up in my life. This should be something that when people see or spend time with me, they all of a sudden begin to recognize God's, patience that's maturing and developing in me. Not just because I'm trying to be more patient, but because more of God is evident in my life that is showing up as patience. But then the word kindness, the need to show unnecessary favor or goodness to someone. I don't know about you. I don't always know how to describe kindness when I show it to somebody else, but I always know when it's been shown to me. Man, when you've been on the receiving end of someone's kindness, you know that in a minute. You know when somebody is giving you favor that wasn't necessary or required, and in a moment you just stopped and you're like, wow, I don't know what motivated that. I don't know what required that, but wow, that felt great. All of us love when someone's kind to us. We always love when somebody goes above and beyond what's necessary required for no real sense of what they're getting back. And then just 2 verses later, it would say a line that says, love is not irritable. Or another translation would say not easily angered, which is funny because when I'm not patient and when I'm not kind, it's typically because I'm irritable. We see how these ones work together, and I love the sense with the translation where it says not irritable, because we love as Christians to say, well, we're not angry, we're just a little irritable. I use the word frustrated. A couple years ago, we were in the car and we were driving, and for whatever reason, I just said, hey girls, what is mom like when she's really, really mad? And of course, it's totally quiet in the car. They're not saying anything. So I'm like, girls, you won't get in trouble. You can say whatever you want. And they begin to describe our personalities of what we're like. And then it wasn't long, and I'm like, hey, what's dad like when he's really mad? And one of the girls took her fist and pushed it down to her sides. She's like, oh, I'm so frustrated. You know what I mean? And I thought, honestly, if that's the worst that I'm like, that's pretty good. Because years before, very different. Now, I want you to hear that we might use a different word like angry or frustrated or irritable, but I'll tell you that those are counter response to being patient and being kind. Let me ask you the question. Are you glad that God is not angry or irritable with you? And instead, he shows us his patience and his kindness? What if we, the church, began to live and model the patient kindness, love of God to other people? What if we modeled it in our marriages? What if we lived it in our parenting? What a complete contrast it would be to the world around us. What it would be is a light for people to see the goodness of God and what's taking place. In Hosea chapters 1-3 is a very unique story. I would encourage many of you to go back and read it. It's about the prophet Hosea who gets a calling from God to kind of go and do something, and he's ultimately going to end up in a relationship with a person by the name of Gomer. Now, I just want you to hear it, that if you thought you had a bummer of a name, it's not as bad as Gomer. That's my bet. You know what I mean? Now, Gomer kind of sounds like Homer. It just sounds, I don't know, there's nothing about it that really sounds great, but I'll just tell you, it's a defining product of the story that's going to take place. The prophet at the time, Hosea, is kind of going through community, and all of a sudden God points out this person, Gomer, and says, Gomer, go and make that person your wife. Now, if you've been serving the Lord faithfully and you've wanted to get married, and finally God kind of calls you and points you in the person of somebody, you're probably like, this is my moment, I'm so excited. And then he realizes that Gomer is not like the traditional available single young lady. No, Gomer has been living as a prostitute in her community and is still living in that very circumstance. And all of a sudden, the prophet is going to be told, go and take this person as your wife. And I'll just tell you, as you read through the Bible and you read through commentaries and what other people said, it has opened an incredible debate because they're asking questions like, would God really command or ask anyone to marry somebody that's living in sexual sin? Well, was she really in sexual sin, or was this slavery? Was this chosen by her or forced upon her? Was this brought up as a child or as a person? And no matter what viewpoint you take it, you don't land in your mind with an idea that you're going, this is a great circumstance. This is a unique one. This is a weird one. Many people have asked the question, well, if God was to ask this person, would he ask somebody else? And I can't answer that. All I can tell you is, let's continue to look at the story. So all of a sudden, Gomer goes with Hosea. They go home and they're married. They have 3 kids. They have an eldest son. There's honor that is being brought to the relationship. Her previous children are being raised in his home. And as God is doing this redemptive, beautiful work, that he's taken someone from kind of pain and hurt and struggle, and he's brought this beautiful family and this great thing. But over time, Gomer gets kind of tired and fed up with what's happening at home, and chooses to head back to the brothel and steps into a life of living as a prostitute. Hosea is broken, has no clue what to do, is taking care of kids and all that is going on, and asking the question, God, what am I to do? And all of a sudden, God speaks again and says, go back and get your wife. And so he sells off land, property, and possessions, and shows up in a brothel to buy his own wife back out of slavery, and bring her home, and forgive her again, and love her and care for her, and brings her back in as the mother of his kids in this connection. And then it says a powerful line, and it says, this illustrates God's love for Israel, which is fancy talk for you and I, that we've been adulterous with our love, and we have loved other things and other people more than God. We have continued to be forgiven and walked right back into the sin we were forgiven for. We made promises to God and then turned around and did the very thing we told him we would never do again. And then we said we're sorry, and we did it again and again. And God is patient and kind and loving with us. And when he had the chance to be angry, when he had the chance to be irritable, when he had the chance to really say, enough is enough, nope. He shows love, he shows patience, and he shows kindness, and ultimately gives a picture of the gospel message to the Old Testament. If you know the story, it's roughly that Hosea is kind of a glimpse of what the Messiah would do, that he would come and bring us out of bondage and out of slavery, to give us a life that is made whole and accept us, to not let the previous labels that have been put on us to define us, to welcome into his family where we would only turn our back on him again and again and walk back to old habits and lifestyles and messes. And every time God would just welcome us back to his family, to forgive us and to love us. And it's this beautiful image of God's love, his patience and kindness towards us. Well, what would we do with that? Like, if that's the way God loved us, what would we do kind of in response? Well, let me look at it this way. What undermines love? What keeps us from loving well? Well, what I think is one of the biggest ones is pain. It's amazing how much pain keeps us from loving well. Pain robs us from experiencing a meaningful relationship. Pain keeps us guarded. Pain keeps up walls so that we don't experience more pain. I was going to ask a question, and then I realized nobody wants to answer the question that I was going to answer. No one wants to answer the question I was going to ask. So I'm just going to assume that there's some people like this. I was going to ask the question, has anyone in here had a pain in like a toenail or a toe or like an infected toenail? And my bet is if I answered that, quite a few of you would raise your hand, or you at least know someone that has. And what we could realize with anyone in this is that you probably could go through your day simply putting on a sock and a shoe and getting dressed, and most people would think you're totally doing just fine. And everything you would go through your day would look normal. You probably could work out a little bit at the gym, maybe lightly hindered, but I bet probably no one would know. You could work at your desk and you could smile and you could be in your relationships or your marriage or parenting or grandparenting or going to school, and for the most part, nobody would know. But every once in a while, you would take that little toe and accidentally bump it on the corner of the bed or something, and all of a sudden pain would go through your entire body. And even though nobody knew something was going on, they would know that something is taking place. See, all of us have pain. Somewhere in our life is something that when it gets bumped just right, all of a sudden it shows up. All of a sudden the infection is made known. All of a sudden what has been hidden begins to come to light. Have you ever been in a meeting and everything seemed cordial and then something was said or done and then somebody loses it? What happened is they just got bumped. All of a sudden something pushed on an area and that pain was revealed. I'll tell you, inside of like our relationships, when somebody is experiencing pain, as long as everybody else is healthy around them, it can typically be managed pretty good. But whenever somebody's pain bumps into somebody else's pain, that's when it gets tough. When you and your spouse have a bad day together, when you and your boss both let pain bump, when somebody's toe hits somebody else's toe, and at the same time the other person's not gracious or understanding, and it just hits at one moment, because all of us have pain. And that pain keeps us from really, really loving. And so I'm going to ask the question, well, why is that? And the answer is because pain makes us selfish. Pain makes us unbelievably selfish. Like, if you broke your leg and you're sitting there with a broken leg, you're probably not thinking about how somebody else is doing somewhere else. All your mind can comprehend is your pain. And so when our focus is on our pain, the last thing we are is patient and kind with anybody else, because we're just trying to deal with our pain. You might even hear somebody when they lose it just say, hey, is everything okay? And they'll just say statements like this. They'll be, there's a lot going on in my life right now. What are they saying? I'm hurting. Well, let's push it a little bit farther. What does pain do? Well, it involuntarily becomes a cry for help. It becomes a cry for help. It's just letting people know that we need help. There's an area of our life. Many times we think that we can just manage this on our own. I mean, Ben, if we just give it enough time, the toe is going to take care of itself. And sometimes you're right, it will. Sometimes just enough time, enough care, managing it will take care of it, but sometimes it actually needs to go into a hospital and it needs to be opened up and parts need to be cut out and things need to be cleaned and some work needs to be done. But if we don't do the hard work, it's never going to get healthy. For some of us, we have some pain in our life that we just keep shoving down, believing that one day it's going to go away. But if we want to enjoy some health in our marriage, we've got to do some work to do some digging. For some of us, there's something that was said or done in a childhood. There was something that was done in a relationship or in a parenting relationship. And until we begin to do the hard work to address it, we're just going to carry that same pain from relationship to relationship to relationship. And by the way, we might have a great story. We'll tell why the last one didn't work out and why we're hopeful for the next and all of those things because we have no ability to see the realities of our own pain. But what would happen if we begin to deal with it? By the way, I don't know why it is, but sometimes in Christian cultures, we have played the value of getting help by going and talking to someone. I'll tell you, I've had so much great success and help by meeting with a godly counselor in my life. I'll tell you, it's not just like you need to go to a Christian counseling center. I remember one of the counselors I got through Kaiser Hospital and just said, hey, I'm a pastor. I would prefer to have somebody that's faith-based, a Christian. They said, not a problem. I'll tell you, meeting with a counselor has been an incredible help in my life. I'll tell you, for some of us, it's that we would show up into a small group and get around some people where we could do life together. For some of us, it might be on Monday nights from 7 to 9 right here, being at CR, where we can come to a place where it's okay to not be okay. And realize that so many of us have hurts, habits, and hangups, that if we begin to deal with our pain, it's amazing how much more loving how much more love we'd be able to receive or love we'd be able to give. But we've got to kind of take those steps on pain. Well, what is pain? Pain is simply hurt, emptiness, loneliness, or purposeless. When all of a sudden there's pain in our life, it's just that these things have shown up. Somewhere there was a hurt that happened in our lives and we never got past it. There's a hole in our life we've never been able to fill. There's a loneliness that even when people are around, we could be in a large crowd and yet still feel completely alone. I'll tell you that in some dark times of going through loss and stuff, I remember being in bed literally just inches away from my wife and yet felt completely alone, completely isolated. It's not that abnormal. And then purposeless, where we're going, hey, I'm going through life and I'm going to work and paying bills and doing this, but I don't feel like it really has any significant meaning. If we don't address some of these things, it's going to keep us from being able to receive the love that God has from us and modeling real godly love for others. Well, I want to give you kind of some practical parts. What is it that will help us get through the change so that we can actually move beyond our hurts to really love? Well, John Maxwell says that there's 3 catalysts for change. The first one, he says, people change when they hurt enough, they will change. If they can just hurt enough. Now, I would agree, at some point the pain will force us to change, but sometimes what he says is that when we change because of hurt, we only change enough to minimize the hurt. And once the hurt stops, we kind of just get to that place. We don't always get to the finish line. You know, if we can just quit the pain, then we would change enough. So there's change. Then he says sometimes one of the catalysts is people change when they've learned enough, when they learn enough. And many times as believers, we think, man, if I could just get in the Bible, if I could just know more Bible, if I could get around godly people or just do another Bible study, then change would happen. But I think it's his third reason that should be the force for change for all of us, and it's this, that people change when they've received enough. What if rather than learning enough about God, what if rather than just experiencing enough life pain, that we would receive enough of God's love that it would bring true change, that there would be healing and forgiveness, wholeness and completeness because of the perfect love that's given to us by God. Do you notice the verse that Doug shared last week? It says God has poured out his Spirit. He poured out his love through his Holy Spirit on all of us so that we can be filled with the fullness that God has for our lives. That's the hope. That's the change that I want for all of us. So let me give you 3 practical quick steps as we wrap up. The first is this, that we would focus on others rather than ourselves. We would recognize that our love will improve as we focus on others rather than ourselves. Now, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with taking a season and focusing on yourself for self-help, betterment, and a lot of these things. But if you walk through life with your focus constantly on yourself, you're going to walk through life alone. And it's possible you'll be like, well, no, Ben, my whole life I've been focused on me and I have a relationship and I have this and that. And I'll tell you, you just don't know that they've been strained. See, when we begin to put our focus and attention on another person, it's amazing that changes in the relationship. How many have ever hopped into kind of meeting somebody and in the first 2 minutes, they so overshared about what they do, have achieved, all of that stuff? Have you ever been in that environment? You're like, oh, this isn't a job interview, man. I got nothing to offer you. You know what I mean? But it's like they don't know how to fill the time, so they're just going to overload you with all the information. And you're like, whoa, bring it back. Just bring it back. Let's just start with casual sharing. What would happen if we began to value another person more than myself? Now, I want you to hear this, that every person that got married, you did this at some point. You did this in the dating relationship. You went to a restaurant you didn't even like because the other person liked it. You went and watched a show. You went to a play. You went to a movie. You did all kinds of things that aren't your interest only because it's the interest of the other person. And you did it not reluctantly, you did it gladly. All of us inside of a relationship, when we see an admiration for somebody or another thing, we will naturally tilt towards their preference, because when we value another person, when we put them in front, all of a sudden it changes the dynamic. Now, if you've ever done a DISC profile, I'm a high D person. I'm a task over people. I kind of think like, hey, if you got to run over one person out of the 100 to get the project done, hey, that's still 99%. Let's go. You know what I mean? Like, I'm driven. I'm focused. That's just the way I am. Many times what I will say is, well, that's just the way that God made me. And I will justify doing that, and I want you to hear this, that is actually wrong. God has actually made me to be a recipient of his love, and then to extend grace, to extend peace, to extend kindness in a way that allows me to use my gifts, but not at the cost of hurting another person. As believers, we should never take casualty as people as just this common thing that allows because of our gifting by God. No, our gifting from God should allow us to encourage, motivate, challenge, but it should be done in a loving, compassionate way. Well, it's not just that it would happen there. We see it in different ways. How many enjoy reality television, by the way? Anybody like reality television? Whether it's Cheer Moms for some of you or down the line of Housewives. Our house, we like reality television, but it's Survivor and Amazing Race. We love Survivor and Amazing Race. We watch it kind of as a family night and follow what it is. And if you know Survivor in any way, that they're going to slowly vote down to one person. And how it goes in the old days is we would see that it was done by first. There was strategy. You would need to know how to use the idols or the different things to make it work in your advantage. And the strategy of putting the right people around you was a way of playing the game. Then we realized that after a few years, it came to a game of power or the ability to win. And if you were a strong player and you could just continue to win all of the competitions, no one could vote you off. But in the last season, what we've realized, I shouldn't say season, I should say seasons, is we now see that there is a social game that's played. And the game is way more built around the fact of people building kind of alliances or relationships where they get to know people and value people and learn how to play the social dynamic of the game. I want you to hear this, that our world has changed just like the game of Survivor. And people are not just looking for strategy or power. They're looking for people that will really, really get to know them. Deep, meaningful relationship. Relationship that doesn't act like we're all together. A relationship that is open about our flaws and our stuff. And when we get in a place where we value another person and give our attention, it's meaningful. It's really meaningful. In fact, in 2 Peter 1, 6 and 7, it says this great line. It says, next, learn to put aside your own desires so that you'll become what? Patient and godly. Gladly letting God have his way in you. This will make it possible the next step, which is for you to enjoy other people and to like them. Some of you are like, I don't like anybody. No, not only are you going to enjoy them, you're going to like them. You know what I mean? When all of a sudden we become patient, when all of a sudden we put our attention on another person, putting our own preferences aside, we begin to watch what would take place, like the relationship begin to develop. So we need to focus on others rather than ourselves, kind of illustrating patience. The next one is that we would focus on being a blessing rather than being blessed. Kindness. Have you ever thought that maybe you're the answer to someone's miracle before your miracle is ever met? What if the kindness that was shown to another, what if the extension of showing compassion, love, true care for another person was ever in your thoughts? I'll tell you, in this season of our lives, more than Becky and I are thinking about like what vacations we go on or what we can do or achieve on our own, it's in a season of helping our kids thrive and grow. We're right now in a season of kind of helping them find out colleges and what that looks like. And for years, I was always worried about how we were going to pay for college. And now that we're here, it's like I'm so looking forward to this season. Because as soon as your kids say this line, Mom, Dad, I feel like God's leading me to what? And then all of a sudden as a parent, you're like, great, let's do that. Because all of a sudden, the blessing is not just what can happen for you, but it's extending it to another. It's really begin to chase after what could take place in these things. A few years ago, we had the chance to move closer by this campus so that we could pastor in this area, and that came at a real challenge. We sold the house, and it sold faster than we were thinking, and so that happened, and we were making offers on others, and one hadn't been accepted yet. So we moved in with a family friend, put everything we had in storage, believing it was just going to be for a month or two. That month or two turned into 12 months. How many could agree that what was fun for 2 months could be total crazy for 12? You know what I mean? We moved in for 12 months, and honestly, in the circumstance, it was a dear family friend who was a widower. She was home alone and had been in a unique circumstance, and when we came in, it was her great joy. Her house was full, and there was meals together and everything else. We literally got to the point every time we made an offer and it didn't happen, she got excited. When we left, she actually cried the time when we left. I want you to hear this. She is no longer a family friend. She's just family. See, when somebody shows that level of kindness to you, when somebody all of a sudden says, hey, it's not just what's in for me, this person has become a grandparent to our children, this person has probably the next loudest voice of influence into our children's lives, this person is as close as you could get because they chose to be a blessing rather than just simply acquire or achieve of themselves. No, they said, hey, there's an opportunity to let me step in. They showed kindness. She modeled godly love in a way that was so over the top. In fact, Hebrews 12:15 would say it this way: look after each other so that not one of you will fail to find God's best blessing. How many would agree you want God's best blessing? Well, I don't want it just for me, I want it for you too. Let's all experience God's blessing. Let's just don't believe that God has just barely enough for me. And then thirdly, as we look at this idea of not irritable, that we would focus on understanding rather than being understood. I'll tell you, every time I'm forced to try to get somebody to understand me, I am irritated, I am bothered, I am frustrated. But if I will slow down and listen, if I will allow somebody else to speak and I can begin to understand kind of what's going on, it's amazing how kind of they become a real person rather than a problem or a circumstance. How I begin to actually view people if I would just simply try to understand. I was kind of talking to you, and I mentioned that our girls are getting ready to go to college, and we're trying to help them narrow down their degrees in college and figure out what they're going to do in life. Now, in full transparency, I still don't know what I'm going to do when I get big. You know what I mean? Like, I was in college. I had no thought of what I was going to do after college. I had no real plan. I just kept saying yes to whatever God had. But at 19 years old, I had no thought of what kind of degree. And so you're trying to help your kids kind of chase after what God's kind of leading and directing and kind of steering them in their way. But you realize that God has made them different from me and different from Becky, and you've got to give them freedom. So often I kind of want to help them and step into the conversation, but many times I just got to slow down and listen. Now, my kids are very different. One of them, you ask a question and she talks a lot. One of you ask a question and they don't say anything. How was your day? Good. That's it. You know what I mean? Like, okay, we're going to go with good. You know what I mean? Like, you've got to work at getting him out. So to understand, you've got to draw it. So I remember before I'd kind of throw out two things. I literally landed in my mind. I'm like, God help me, just keep them away from an art history degree or philosophy, right? I just want them to be able to have maybe a job. Now, if you're in here and you're thriving with one of those degrees, you go. I'm just telling you, you get it. You understand the challenges, right? So you're kind of pointing them, and I'm trying to keep them their things. And what I've had to learn is to understand my kids is to understand where they are and what they're going through. So my one that struggles to talk in a straight across conversation talks best when we're in the car doing a project. And so on the way to go pick up something and just talking in the car with the music on and a little bit more relaxed is a way easier communication than just sitting across a table going, so what do you want to do with your life, and all that pressure, and how do you begin to unpack and walk through and lead somebody? How do you let them have a safe place to open up dialogue without judgment? Where it's okay to be a sounding board and just say something and think out loud, and not everything have to be so perfectly thought through and can wrestle it. See, understanding takes work. It requires slowing down and being patient and giving attention. It gives them eye contact. There's sometimes when I'm struggling with this, like if I'm at a table, at a conference table, under the table, I will literally take my hands and turn them palms up and sit and turn my body so that my shoulders are equal across from their shoulders. So I'm just opening my posture because my traditional response is to lean back, cross my legs, close off because I'm just thinking of what I'm going to say next so that I can prove what I'm right. No. If we want to understand how do we become listeners and draw it out, well, in Philippians chapter 2, verse 3 and 4, it says, don't be selfish. Don't try to impress others. Be humble. I love this line. Thinking of others better than yourselves. Don't look out only for your own interest, but also take an interest in others too. We would be patient and kind. So maybe what would be our final takeaway? That we would continue exploring God's view of love. That we would realize that it's different from the love that we've grown up with, that's been modeled. It's a perfect love. It's a love that brings completeness. I started by sharing kind of all these viewpoints on what kind of love is through the view of small children. And there's one that I love. It says this: a 4-year-old child whose neighbor was an elderly man had recently lost his wife. Upon seeing the man crying on his front porch, the boy walked across the gentleman's yard. He climbed up into the older gentleman's lap and just sat there. Later on that evening, his mother asked him what he had said to his neighbor. The little boy responded, "Nothing, Mom. I just helped him cry." Would you pray with me? Dear Lord, I thank you for your love. I pray that we would be people that understand patience and kindness. That rather than being so irritable and so quick-tempered, that we would first be receivers of your perfect love. And rather than having to prove ourselves, rather than having to force our viewpoint, that we could value another person, to show them true kindness, to be patient with them long enough to model value and worth, that in the process, Lord God, there would be true meaningful connection. Lord, you've designed us and made us to be in relationship, and I pray that we would experience a deep level of relationship different from the other world, that is not a love that's like manipulated, not a love that's forced with expectations, but one that is given freely. In fact, Lord, like that idea, could we be someone that loves so deeply that we give everything expecting nothing back in return? Lord, because it's exactly what you did. Lord, it is our privilege to be here. It is our privilege to grow in the likeness of you. Lord, I pray that we would be challenged to walk out this door, not as just people that try to love better, but people that receive healing from hurts and pains, people that receive perfect love, and people that learn to be extenders of your love to the world around us. In your incredible name we pray, amen.